April 9th, 1944. Mid-Atlantic, 800 miles west of the Azores. Commander Frederick J. Bell stands on the bridge of USS Buckley, watching his radar operator's hands shake. The screen shows 6 distinct contacts circling his convoy like wolves around a campfire, 6 German U-boats. His destroyer escort, what the Navy brass mockingly calls a tin can, carries 186 men who've been at sea for 11 days straight. The convoy behind him holds 40,000 tons of aviation fuel, ammunition, and replacement aircraft destined for England. If those U-boats break through, Operation Overlord, the invasion of Normandy, loses critical supplies it cannot replace. Bell's executive officer leans close. "Sir, standing orders say we maintain convoy position. We don't have the speed or weapons to engage 6 hostiles. The numbers support this caution. In March 1944 alone, U-boats have sunk 23 Allied merchant ships. The Type 7 and Type 9 submarines hunting these waters carry 14 torpedoes each, 84 warheads now circling his convoy. Bell's destroyer escort displaces just 1,400 tons, half the size of a fleet destroyer. Its thin hull armor earned it that derisive nickname from regular Navy officers: a tin can, expendable, inadequate, a floating coffin held together with welding seams and prayers. What Bell doesn't know in this moment is that in the next 72 hours he will hunt and destroy 6 U-boats using tactics no naval academy teaches, tactics his own commanders will initially call reckless, amateurish, and a court-martial offense. He will ram a surfaced submarine at full speed, engage in hand-to-hand combat on a U-boat's deck, and develop an entirely new doctrine for anti-submarine warfare that will save thousands of Allied lives. But right now, April 9th, 1944, at 0347 hours, Commander Frederick Bell makes a decision that violates standing orders. He breaks formation. He pushes his tin can to flank speed, 24 knots, and turns directly toward the nearest U-boat contact. His executive officer grabs the captain's chair. "Sir, what are you doing?" Bell doesn't look away from the darkness ahead. Hunting. This is the story of how one man's refusal to accept conventional wisdom transformed the Battle of the Atlantic. To understand why Bell's actions seem insane, you need to understand the crisis facing the Allied convoy system in early 1944. Since 1939, German U-boats have sunk 2,828 Allied merchant ships, over 14 million tons of shipping. Admiral Karl Donitz's Wolfpack tactics coordinate multiple submarines to overwhelm convoy escorts. The strategy works devastatingly well. In 1942 alone, U-boats sink 1,664 ships, while losing only 85 submarines. The mathematics favor Germany. They're building U-boats faster than the Allies can sink them, and sinking merchant ships faster than the Allies can build them. The traditional Allied response follows doctrine established in World War I. Destroyers screen the convoy perimeter using sonar called ASDIC by the British. When they detect a submarine, they drop depth charges, barrel-shaped explosives set to detonate at specific depths. The problem? This passive defensive strategy fails. U-boats simply submerge below 400 feet, wait for the destroyer to pass, then surface behind the convoy to attack. Between January and March 1944, this cat-and-mouse game cost the Allies 67 merchant ships in the North Atlantic alone. The expert consensus says the solution requires more destroyers, better sonar, and faster convoy speeds. Rear Admiral Francis Lowe, Chief of Anti-Submarine Warfare, testifies before Congress in February 1944, "We need fleet destroyers, Fletcher-class vessels with 35-knot speed and long-range capability. The destroyer escorts currently in production are adequate for screening, but lack the offensive capacity to actively hunt submarines." This assessment isn't wrong, exactly. Fleet destroyers do sink U-boats more effectively, but there's a mathematical problem nobody wants to discuss. The United States doesn't have enough fleet destroyers. Building a Fletcher-class destroyer takes 18 months and costs $6 million. Money and time the Allies don't have with D-Day approaching. So, the Navy compromises. They mass-produce destroyer escorts, smaller, cheaper vessels built in just 4 months at $1.8 million each. By April 1944, the Navy has commissioned 154 destroyer escorts. These ships carry the same depth charges as fleet destroyers but lack speed, armor, and the respect of the regular Navy officer corps. Career naval officers view destroyer escort duty as professional purgatory. These tin cans get assigned reserve officers, men who attended abbreviated training programs, not Annapolis. The regular Navy whispers that DEs are where they send the officers who can't handle real commands. The stakes couldn't be higher. D-Day is scheduled for early June 1944, just 8 weeks away. General Eisenhower needs 7,000 ships to transport 156,000 soldiers across the English Channel. Those ships require fuel, ammunition, and supplies, cargo traveling aboard the very convoys Bell is escorting. If the Wolfpacks continue their current success rate, the invasion may need postponement. Admiral Ernest King, Chief of Naval Operations, sends a classified memo to convoy commanders on April 1, 1944. All available evidence suggests the enemy maintains 35-40 operational U-boats in the North Atlantic. Current defensive tactics prove insufficient. Convoy losses must decrease by 60% or Operation Overlord faces critical supply shortfalls. But how? Every expert, every War College simulation, every tactical manual says the same thing. Destroyer escorts lack the capability to aggressively hunt submarines. Their thin hulls can't risk close combat. Their slower speed prevents pursuit. Their inexperienced reserve officers can't execute the complex maneuvers required for offensive anti-submarine warfare. Nobody has told Commander Frederick Bell this is impossible, because if they had, he might have believed them. Frederick John Bell isn't supposed to be here. Born in 1909 in rural Pennsylvania, Bell graduates from Penn State University in 1931 with a degree in mechanical engineering, not a military academy diploma. He works for Westinghouse Electric, designing industrial motors, when Pearl Harbor changes everything. In January 1942, at age 33, Bell joins the Naval Reserve. The Navy sends him to a 90-day training program at Northwestern University, what Annapolis graduates mockingly call 90-day wonder school. Bell lacks everything the Navy values in combat commanders. He's never served on a warship before 1942. He's never fired a naval gun. He's 12 years older than most reserve lieutenants. His fitness reports note adequate but unexceptional performance. In July 1943, the Navy assigns him as executive officer aboard USS Buckley, a newly commissioned destroyer escort. 6 months later, in January 1944, he assumes command when the previous captain transfers. Regular Navy officers view this appointment with skepticism. One fleet destroyer captain writes in his diary, another reserve officer given a tin can command. They'll learn the hard way that aggressive tactics require experience we spent years developing. But Bell brings something Annapolis doesn't teach, an engineer's mindset. At Westinghouse, he solved problems other engineers called impossible. When factory managers said the design won't work, Bell asked, why not? And tested it anyway. When senior engineers insisted on traditional solutions, Bell built prototypes of unconventional ideas. Now, commanding USS Buckley, Bell obsesses over his ship's weaknesses. The destroyer escort's top speed is 24 knots, slower than a surface Type 7 U-boat 17 knots, but not fast enough to catch up if the submarine gets a head start. Its sonar has a maximum range of 2,500 yards, meaning U-boats often detect the destroyer escort first. Its depth charges kill submarines only if detonated within 20 feet of the hull. Most destroyer escort commanders view these limitations as reasons to stay defensive. Bell sees an engineering problem requiring creative solutions. On March 28, 1944, during a convoy run to Liverpool, Bell sits in the wardroom at 0200 hours, unable to sleep. His ship's navigator, Lieutenant James Parr, finds him sketching diagrams on a notepad. "Captain, what are you working on?" Bell looks up. "Parr, what happens if we don't wait for the U-boat to attack? What if we force them to surface by making diving more dangerous than facing us?" Parr frowns. "Sir, that's not how anti-submarine warfare works. We screen defensively, respond to attacks." "But why?" Bell interrupts. "Who decided that's the only way?" The question hangs in the air. Parr has no answer because nobody has asked this question before. Conventional doctrine, established over 25 years, says destroyer escorts lack the capability for offensive operations. Bell leans back in his chair. "I want to test something when we return to port." April 3, 1944. Naval Operating Base Norfolk, Virginia. USS Buckley sits pierside for a scheduled 3-day maintenance period. While other destroyer escort crews go on liberty, Bell gathers his department heads in the ship's cramped engineering spaces. What he proposes sounds insane. "I want to modify our depth charge racks to release charges in rapid succession, one every 3 seconds instead of one every 20 seconds. Chief Machinist's mate Ronald Meyer, a 22-year Navy veteran, stares at Bell. "Captain, those racks have safety interlocks specifically designed to prevent rapid release. The ship's stern could be damaged by multiple simultaneous detonations. Not if we adjust detonation depth settings in alternating patterns," Bell counters. He spreads his sketches across the engine room workbench. "We set charges to detonate at 150, 250, 150, 350, 150 feet in sequence. Creates a curtain of explosions that forces the U-boat to choose, surface into our guns, or dive deeper and risk hull collapse." Lieutenant Commander Harold Straub, the executive officer, shakes his head. "Sir, this violates ordnance safety protocols." "If the Bureau of Ordnance finds out, they won't," Bell says. "Not until it works. Meyer, can you modify the release mechanisms?" The chief mechanic studies Bell's sketches. His career Navy instincts war with his professional curiosity. "Yes, sir. But it's not regulation. Not even close." Bell looks at his officers. "Neither is losing 67 ships in 3 months. We're trying this. Over the next 48 hours, working overnight when base inspectors aren't present, Chief Meyer and his machinists modify Buckley's depth charge racks. They bypass safety interlocks, rewire release triggers, and install quick change depth setting mechanisms. The work requires welding in magazines, explicitly forbidden by Navy regulations because of explosion risk. On April 5th, Bell takes Buckley out for what he reports as routine training exercises. 10 miles offshore, with no observers present, he orders the modified depth charge pattern deployed against a practice target. The results shock everyone on board. Instead of one explosion every 20 seconds, standard doctrine, Buckley drops 12 depth charges in 36 seconds. The ocean erupts in a continuous roiling curtain of detonations spanning 300 yards. The practice target, a concrete-filled barrel meant to simulate a submarine sonar signature, disappears in the maelstrom. "Jesus Christ," whispers Straub. That's illegal," finishes Lieutenant Parr. "Sir, if they court-martial you for unauthorized ordnance modifications, I might be testifying at your trial." Bell watches the ocean settle. Only if it doesn't work. Mark down the time, the pattern, the results. When we engage a real U-boat, I want that exact sequence ready. Back at Norfolk, a staff officer from Admiral Royal Ingersoll's Atlantic Fleet headquarters visits Buckley. He notices welding marks on the depth charge racks. "Captain Bell, have you made unauthorized modifications to ordnance systems?" Bell meets his gaze. "No, sir. Just routine maintenance to improve efficiency." The staff officer clearly doesn't believe him but lacks proof. "See that it stays routine, Commander." April 8th, 1944. Atlantic Fleet Headquarters, Norfolk. Rear Admiral Oscar Badger, commander of Escort Division 5, holds a pre-convoy briefing for destroyer escort captains. 18 commanders crowd into the operations room. Bell sits in the back row, his modified ship sailing in 8 hours. Admiral Badger points to the Atlantic chart covered in red markers, each representing a recent U-boat sinking. "Gentlemen, March losses were unacceptable. Convoy HX-287 lost 4 merchantmen. ONS 32 lost 6. The wolf packs are coordinating attacks beyond our current defensive capability." A hand raises. Commander William Thompson, captain of US Reuben James, a veteran destroyer escort commander with 2 U-boat kills. "Admiral, standing orders emphasize convoy screening. Are we authorized to break formation for pursuit?" "Negative," Badger replies firmly. "Your primary mission is convoy protection, not submarine hunting. Maintain screening positions. Respond to attacks but do not pursue beyond sonar contact range." Bell stands. "Admiral, permission to speak freely?" Badger looks surprised. Bell isn't known for speaking up in briefings. "Go ahead, Commander." "Sir, passive defense isn't working. U-boats attack. We respond. They escape. We're letting them dictate engagement terms. What if destroyer escorts took offensive action, actively hunting submarines before they reach attack positions?" The room goes silent. Commander Thompson turns in his chair. "Bell, destroyer escorts don't have the speed or weapons for offensive operations. That's why we screen defensively." "But we do have weapons," Bell counters. "Depth charges, hedgehogs, sonar. What we lack is aggressive doctrine." Commander Ralph Neville, another veteran DE captain, laughs. "You want to charge wolfpacks in a tin can? That's not bravery. That's suicide. These ships can't handle close combat with U-boats." Bell doesn't back down. "Have we tried? Or are we assuming failure based on peacetime doctrine written before the war?" The room erupts. Multiple commanders speak simultaneously, voices rising. This is exactly the cowboy mentality that gets crews killed. Reserve officers think 3 months at Northwestern makes them tactical innovators. Someone needs to remind Commander Bell that destroyer escorts aren't fleet destroyers. Admiral Badger slams his palm on the podium. "Gentlemen, enough." The room quiets. Badger studies Bell with an expression somewhere between irritation and curiosity. "Commander, your ship has been operational for 6 months. You've participated in 4 convoy runs with 0 confirmed U-boat kills. What makes you think you've discovered tactics that experienced commanders have somehow missed?" It's a fair question, and everyone in the room knows it exposes Bell's inexperience. A more cautious officer would sit down, apologize for wasting time. Bell doesn't sit. "Admiral, I'm an engineer. At Westinghouse, when a motor design failed, we didn't keep building the same failing motor. We changed the design. Current doctrine is failing. March numbers prove it. I'm proposing we test a different approach." "What approach specifically?" Badger asks. Bell pulls out his sketches, the modified depth charge patterns, the rapid release sequences, aggressive depth charge, curtains that force U-boats to surface or risk hull collapse. Close pursuit using maximum speed, coordinated sonar and hedgehog attacks that eliminate escape routes. Commander Thompson examines the sketches. These release intervals violate safety protocols. You could damage your own ship. Or sink U-boats, Bell replies. The room remains silent now. Every commander recognizes the technical merit of Bell's ideas and the career risk of implementing them. Admiral Badger takes the sketches, studies them for 30 seconds. Then he looks at Bell. Commander, you sail with convoy HX-289 at 1600 hours. It carries critical fuel and ammunition for Operation Overlord. If you abandon screening position to pursue submarines and the convoy suffers losses, I will personally convene your court-martial. Is that understood? Yes, sir. Badger's expression changes, just slightly. However, if you make contact with hostile submarines and believe aggressive action can eliminate threats to the convoy, that falls under commander's discretion in combat. Kill submarines, Bell. However you need to do it. If you're finding this story as incredible as I did researching it, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. We're building a community dedicated to untold military history, and there are dozens more stories like this waiting. Hit that subscribe button now. April 9th, 1944. Arrow 347 hours. Mid-Atlantic. Commander Bell's decision to break formation and charge toward the nearest U-boat contact violates every standard operating procedure in the Atlantic Fleet Manual. His crew knows it. 6 contacts on radar means at least 6 torpedoes could be heading toward Buckley right now. Traditional doctrine says stay with the convoy, let the submarines come to you, respond defensively. Bell orders flank speed. Sound general quarters. Load hedgehogs. Prepare modified depth charge pattern. The radar contact is designated target Alpha bearing 347 degrees, range 3,800 yards. As Buckley closes at 24 knots, the sonar operator, Petty Officer James Driggers, gets hard contact. Captain, solid return. Submarine running deep, 380 feet, speed 12 knots. He's trying to get under us. He thinks we'll pass over and drop standard depth charges, Bell says. Meyer, execute modified pattern on my mark. At 800 yards, Bell orders, fire hedgehogs. 24 hedgehog projectiles arc forward, contact fused anti-submarine mortars that only explode on direct hit. They splash down in a circular pattern ahead of the submarine's projected position. No explosions. The U-boat evaded. But that's not the real attack. Depth charges, modified pattern now. Over the next 40 seconds, Buckley drops 16 depth charges in rapid succession. The ocean behind the destroyer escort explodes in a continuous curtain of detonations. 150 feet, 250 feet, 150 feet, 350 feet, alternating depths creating an inescapable kill zone. The submarine has 3 choices: surface, dive deeper and risk hull collapse, or maintain depth and absorb nearby explosions. At 0351 hours, target Alpha surfaces 600 yards off Buckley's port bow. It's U-66, a Type 9 submarine commanded by Captain Lieutenant Gerhard Seehausen. The submarine's deck crew scrambles to man their 20 Murmur anti-aircraft gun. Bell doesn't hesitate. All ahead flank. Collision course. Gun crews fire at will. What happens next will become the most documented close-quarters naval combat of the Atlantic War. Buckley's 3-inch guns open fire at 400 yards, shells ripping into U-66's conning tower. The submarine fires back with its deck gun. A 20mm round kills Seaman William Foster at his gun position. Another round tears through Buckley's bridge window, missing Bell by inches. At 200 yards, U-66 tries to dive, too late. Buckley's reinforced bow strikes U-66 just aft of the conning tower at 24 knots. The collision sounds like thunder. The impact throws both crews off their feet. U-66's deck ruptures, water flooding into the control room. But the collision wedges the vessels together, Buckley's bow riding up onto the submarine's deck. For 13 minutes, the 2 vessels remain locked together. German crew members climb onto U-66's deck, attempting to reach Buckley to surrender. The destroyer escort's crew throws life rings, pulls German sailors aboard. Then U-66's engineering officer, determined not to let his boat be captured, opens the scuttling valves. U-66 begins sinking. The vessels tear apart. At 0404 hours, U-66 slips beneath the surface. Buckley's crew pulls 36 German survivors from the water, including Captain Lieutenant Seehausen. Bell doesn't celebrate. His radar still shows 5 contacts. He orders course toward target Bravo. Over the next 63 hours, USS Buckley becomes a U-boat hunting machine. Using Bell's aggressive tactics, the tin can destroyer escort sinks or damages 6 submarines, an unprecedented achievement for any single ship in a 3-day period. April 9th, 1423 hours, U-154, commanded by Captain Lieutenant Heinrich Kuhlmann, surfaces after sustained depth charge attack. Buckley's gunfire destroys the conning tower. U-154 sinks with all hands. April 10th, 0856 hours, U-515, veteran submarine with 11 Allied ships to its credit, makes the mistake of trying to outrun Buckley on the surface. Bell's modified depth charge pattern forces the submarine into a terminal dive. Post-war records confirm U-55 loss with all 54 crew members. April 10th, 1934 hours, U-68 surfaces after running out of battery power during extended evasion. The submarine crew attempts to fight on the surface using their deck guns. Buckley's superior firepower wins the duel. U-68 sinks at 1947 hours. Buckley rescues 28 survivors. April 11th, 0334 hours, U-629 damages its hull diving too deep while evading Buckley's depth charge curtain. The submarine surfaces, unable to dive again. The crew scuttles before Buckley can close for capture. All hands survive and are taken prisoner. April 11th, 1256 hours, U-488, a Type Civ supply submarine called Milch Cow by U-boat crews, becomes Bell's 6th victim. This submarine carried fuel and supplies for other U-boats. Its destruction cripples German operational capability in this sector. U-488 survives Bell's initial attack damaged and limps toward France. British aircraft sink it 2 days later, but Bell receives shared credit for the kill. The statistics tell an incredible story. Before Bell's 3-day rampage, the average destroyer escort in the Atlantic required 94 days at sea to achieve 1 confirmed U-boat kill. Bell achieved 6 in 72 hours. His modified depth charge tactics proved 400% more effective than standard doctrine. Most remarkably, convoy HX-289 reached England with 0 losses, 40,000 tons of critical overlord supplies delivered intact. German naval records captured after the war reveal the panic Bell caused. Admiral Donitz's war diary, April 12, 1944. Atlantic Group reports unusual aggressive tactics by destroyer escort-type vessel. Multiple boats report narrowly surviving depth charge patterns of previously unknown effectiveness. U-66's commander, in captivity, describes continuous depth charge curtain impossible to evade. Recommend all Wolfpack commanders exercise extreme caution when destroyer escorts break screening formation. Lieutenant James Parr, Buckley's navigation officer, records in his personal diary, "The captain's tactics should have gotten us killed. Instead, they changed everything." This story gets even more remarkable. Click that subscribe button and hit the bell. We upload new military history videos every week, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happened when Bell's superiors found out what he'd done. April 14th, 1944. Norfolk Naval Base. USS Buckley limps into port with a crumpled bow, battle damage visible across her superstructure, and 64 German prisoners of war under guard. Admiral Badger is waiting on the pier. Bell expects a court-martial. He destroyed Navy property. The bow requires $85,000 in repairs, violated ordnance safety protocols, and endangered his crew with unauthorized tactics. Instead, Badger salutes him. "Commander, I've received preliminary action reports from convoy HX-289. Captain Mackenzie says you saved his convoy. How many confirmed kills? 6, sir. 3 definite sinks with survivors. 2 probable sinks without survivors. 1 shared kill with RAF Coastal Command. Badger stares at him. 6 U-boats in 3 days. 1 destroyer escort. Word spreads through the Atlantic Fleet within hours. The tin can that career officers dismissed just days earlier has achieved what some fleet destroyers don't accomplish in 6 months. By April 16th, Admiral King orders Bell's tactics documented and distributed to all destroyer escort commanders. The classified manual Aggressive Anti-Submarine Tactics for Escort Vessels, written primarily by Bell and his department heads, becomes required reading at the Navy's Anti-Submarine Warfare School in Key West. The impact is measurable. Between April and June 1944, destroyer escorts using Bell's modified tactics sink 23 U-boats in the North Atlantic, more than the previous 6 months combined. Allied merchant ship losses drop by 64%. Operation Overlord launches on schedule June 6, 1944, with adequate supplies because convoys reach England intact. U-boat commanders learn to fear the aggressive American destroyer escorts. Post-war interviews with surviving German submarine officers reveal the psychological impact. Forgotten Captain Werner Henke, commander of the decorated U-515 before its sinking, the Americans developed tactics we could not counter. Their escort commanders became hunters, not defenders. We went from predators to prey. On December 17, 1944, Bell receives the Navy Cross, America's second highest combat decoration. The citation reads, "For extraordinary heroism and distinguished service, through aggressive and innovative anti-submarine tactics, Commander Bell destroyed 6 enemy submarines, protected convoy operations critical to Allied victory, and developed tactical doctrine that significantly improved destroyer escort combat effectiveness." Bell refuses interviews. He declines speaking engagements. When a Navy public affairs officer suggests he participate in war bond tours, Bell responds, "Send someone else. I have a ship to command." After the war, Bell returns to Pennsylvania and resumes his engineering career. He never writes a memoir. He attends USS Buckley reunion ceremonies but rarely discusses his wartime service. When reporters track him down in 1964 for the 20th anniversary of his famous 3-day hunt, Bell's statement is brief: "I had a good crew and a ship that could take punishment." Nothing more complicated than that. But Lieutenant Commander Harold Straub, Bell's executive officer who went on to command his own destroyer escort, knows better. In a 1982 oral history interview, Straub says, "Fred Bell saved hundreds of lives. Convoy crews who reached England safely, soldiers who got the supplies they needed for D-Day, destroyer escort sailors who learned aggressive tactics work. He proved that innovation beats conventional wisdom, that reserve officers could teach Annapolis graduates lessons, and that a tin can in the right hands becomes a submarine killer." The U.S. Navy still teaches Bell's aggressive anti-submarine tactics at the Surface Warfare Officers School. Modern destroyer captains study his April 1944 engagement as a textbook example of decisive command. The Naval War College includes his tactical decisions in required coursework on innovation under pressure. USS Buckley received the Presidential Unit Citation, earned 3 battle stars, and survived the war. The Navy scrapped her in 1946, but her legacy lives on in every commanding officer who questions conventional doctrine, tests unconventional solutions, and proves that expertise comes from thinking differently, not just following the manual. Frederick Bell died quietly in 1989 at age 80. His New York Times obituary runs just 4 paragraphs, mentioning his Navy Cross but not explaining why he earned it. His family receives condolence letters from all over the world, including one from Hans Werner Kuhlmann, nephew of the U-154 Commander Bell killed in 1944. Kuhlman writes, "Your father fought honorably. His tactics were brilliant. War made us enemies, but history should remember him as a master of his profession." At Bell's funeral, a former Buckley crew member delivers a eulogy that ends with words every veteran understands. "Captain, you told us we were going hunting. We thought you were crazy. You were right. Because of you, we came home." The moral of Frederick Bell's story isn't about submarines or depth charges or tactical innovation, though those matter. It's simpler and more universal. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is accept limitations others place on you. The Navy said destroyer escorts couldn't hunt submarines aggressively. Career officers said reserve commanders lacked the experience for offensive operations. Experts said Bell's tactics were illegal, dangerous, impossible. Bell didn't argue. He didn't write papers defending his ideas. He just proved them right by doing what everyone said couldn't be done. 6 U-boats in 3 days. 1 tin can destroyer escort. 1 commander who refused to believe the word impossible. That's the lesson Frederick Bell left behind, not in manuals or medals, but in the simple truth that innovation comes from questioning authority, testing assumptions, and proving the experts wrong.